Today, we're out at Streatham with Andrew Caldow, who runs his own drainage business, to take a look at his laser levelling bucket and his operation. Andrew is the owner-operator of Caldow Ag Services, which he's been running full-time for the past 4 years. He mainly operates in South-West Victoria and southern New South Wales. Andrew offers the whole package for drainage works, including the mapping and designing, and the actual moving of the dirt as well. It's a pretty impressive setup you've got here, Andrew. Can you tell me a bit about what's going on here?
Doing some drainage work. So basically the process of digging some strategic drains and using that dirt to fill some lower areas in the paddock and create more fall down to the drains so that they work more efficiently.
And so that's what these machines do?
Yes.
So how do they do it, essentially?
So we use 3D GPS. So we have some mapping software that we put in a little buggy and drive around and map the paddock, put that into a software on a laptop and go through and design the paddocks.
Yeah.
And work out where the areas need to be drained, and we'll work out sort of roughly what it's going to take to do the job and work out a bit of an estimation on the cost, and we go ahead from there and go and do it, and then we just USB it into the machines and away we go.
All available in the computer, all that design process that you've done, it's all available pretty much in the cab there?
Yeah, per job, every job's there on the screen.
Yep.
So this entire field will be on that screen, and it shows the areas where the operators have to go to take the dirt from and where to take the dirt to and what level to lay it out on.
What's the big green thing behind the big tractor? What's that called?
It's called a laser bucket.
Yep.
But in more modern years we sort of used GPS technology on them rather than traditionally it was laser.
Yeah.
And before that it was by eye. So in more modern times, Ag GPS has got so much better, so much more accurate, so it's made it available.
Yeah.
By using 3D GPS you can do multi-grades. So to achieve the same result you move like a third of the amount of dirt. So,
yeah, wow.
So obviously, if you move more dirt you move, the more expensive it is. Yeah.
Of course. So the buckets will pick up the dirt where there's too much and put it down where there isn't. Is that pretty much how it works?
That's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then what's on the back there, the tine-looking things? Are they also utilised, or are they specific?
So they're rippers. So when the ground gets a little bit hard, we rip it to make it a bit easier to load the machines, and it crumbles up. So then it'll flow out of the machines on grade. If we don't do that, it'll come up in big slabs into the machine. Yeah. And then you can't lay those out because sometimes you might be only laying 30 millimetres of dirt out in some spots, and if you've got a slab there this big, it's not going to go out. So.
No, it's not. Yeah. So it sounds like you've got like a range of depths that it goes to. What's the range essentially that you'll cut and fill, I guess?
It's very variable, but down to about 30 mil.
Yep.
Below that, you're not really going to achieve it. Mm-hmm. You can move as much as you want. It's just about how much topsoil you've got. And if you have to go deeper than your topsoil, then you have to undercut that and then bring topsoil back and fill it back up. If you were cutting 400 mil off, for instance, you would have to come back and you'd have to undercut a couple of 100 mil and then put that couple of 100 mil of topsoil back onto that.
Why'd you go with, I suppose, using a laser level bucket over the various other drainage machinery you can use? What was your choice behind this one?
So we like laser buckets because they can sort of do the bulk of the work, and also trim just as well as a grader would. Yeah. And we can do tilt, so it allows us to do V drains if we need to do a V drain, or make the batters perfectly on the side of the drains, and get the floors dead flat for a flat bottom drain. Yeah. With the tilting it allows you to do that, and the walking beam axles on the back of the laser buckets are they make the GPS's job a lot easier. Every little bump that the wheel runs over, it doesn't drop the blade, so it'll average it out, and so it makes it a lot easier for the GPS to follow it. So as opposed to a normal scraper, I suppose.
Yeah, versus doing it by eye like you used to. Do you have to use a speciality tractor for it, or can you use it your standard tractor on farm that you might have? Yeah,
so you can. I wouldn't recommend it. You physically can, and some people do. But the tractors we run are specific scraper special tractors. Mm-hmm. So they have heavier diffs, heavier transmissions, different gearing in them, and parts of the chassis are heavier as well, like in the articulation and stuff like that, to handle the loads that are quite high sometimes, and and not in others. So it's more about how quickly, like, you have a high load come on, within a matter of a couple of seconds.
Wow, so even in a couple of seconds you can get it full.
For next to no load to 110%.
Wow.
It'll, within a couple of seconds. So it's quite harsh on the gear. You can use a standard ag tractor, but yeah, you'll probably find you won't get very many hours out of it before you start spending a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you talked about having a designing process with the buggy and run around. Is that what you guys do as well? Do you do the whole process from start to finish, essentially? Yeah,
we do, yeah. So our process is that we'll come in and we'll elevation map your paddock if you haven't already got some previous data.
Yeah.
If you've got previous data, we can have a look at that, see if it's good enough for what we need to do, and then and if not, we can go and remap it. Mm-hmm. Generally do that around sort of sowing time before the crops get too big.
Yeah.
And then throughout the growing season, I'll design it up, take it, or do a rough design sort of thing, work out exactly how much dirt we need to move and how far we need to move it and all those sorts of things. And then I can work out a relatively close estimation of what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
And then, go back to the farmer and tell them that, and they can work out from a budgeting perspective how much they do or don't do, yeah. So
do you map each paddock at a time, or is it the whole farm you do to try and work out, I suppose, if they're budgeting, they're going to want to maybe do some paddocks over the others, or do you really need to look at the whole system?
We can do each paddock, and that's what we've been doing lately. It'd be very much in the interest to get all the data if you could, and the cost of it and all that wasn't a problem of getting all the data. You get your entire farm, and then I can put all that, and then I can create an entire design for the whole farm, and then you're not going back and doing things twice. You're better off to get as much data as you possibly can, and then take it from a whole farm approach, and then you can work out what you actually want to implement. Yeah. Because the design process and the mapping process isn't expensive compared to the earth moving.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
How long does it take to do all of this, I suppose, from start to finish? If you started at the design and then went all the way to actually having the drainage work all done in field, how long are you looking, say, for just a paddock roughly?
You'd probably want to, to do the process properly, you would want probably 8-9 months, but I'm not working on it for 8 or 9 months. By the time you run through that mapping, then design process, and then lock in for some earth moving, it generally take a growing season.
Do you find that you're busier because you offer the whole service in one?
It's always easy to have one port of call, like anything that is happening with the entire drainage project. The farmer only has one person to ring. I think that's pretty appealing to them, yeah. That's why we went down the track that we did of doing everything in-house, yeah.
Yeah, definitely easier if you just have to ring one person, then pick up the phone and have all these multiple conversations with multiple people about the one issue, for sure.
Yeah, and there's always something when we go to do the earthworks, there's something somewhere that's not right, or it isn't going to work because something else has been done in the next paddock that we didn't know about when we were mapping it, or if it was 3 separate people, mapping people, design people, earthworks people, then you've got to try and get all them on board together at the same time to fix whatever the issue is, whereas I can come out and just fix it and get on with it, sort of thing, I guess.
Much easier.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's like a constant issue, or is it just the occasional something that might come up?
Yeah, the machines don't like rocks.
I don't think many do.
It's pretty hard on that, so the maintenance on these machines is very high, and getting them bogged all the time, and because that happens quite frequently. Yeah, there's that, and then high stubble loads. So we couldn't physically do enough of the work after burning if we were to burn stubbles and things like that to do it, which is probably the perfect recipe, but no one likes doing that, of course.
No.
And you don't have the time by the time you do that and then do the earthworks and then try and get the crop in, it sort of all clashes.
What time of the year can you do this work, and how long have you got to do it?
We can never get going before November generally. If we're lucky, we can do some in November in some pasture and stuff like that when there's not crop. And when it really kicks into gear is probably second week of December.
Yeah.
And then you get to April and it starts getting a bit nerve-wracking about moisture, yeah.
With the moisture, is it just about what's on top or what's happening underneath, or a combination of sort of everything?
Yeah, underneath mainly,
yeah.
Because quite often it looks dry, like this looks dry, but we take 150 mil off and it's not dry anymore.
Typical Western districts, really.
Yeah, and then we've got that dirt is what gets brought up out of the drains or the cut areas and then gets laid on the paddock, so we've got to be able to lay that out on grade, so the wetter it is, the more cloddy it is. And
with drainage work, I suppose there's always a lot of stuff that works and doesn't work dependent on farm. Where do you find this works best and where I suppose it doesn't work best?
So soil type's probably the biggest variability in it, I guess. So we have there's some areas that have quite good slope and they're still a wet area, so that's some sort of soil constraint or subsurface water moving through. So in those cases, things like subsurface tile drainage or things like that would be the go for just intercepting that subsurface, because we can't do that.
Yeah.
Other than digging a massive drain.
Can do that.
We can do that, but that's probably the main one where we see in some cases where it'd be better than doing this.
Do your clients see results like immediately after doing this, or is it something they have to wait a season for to see as well?
There's a little bit of a hangover on the first year of it because of we'd really damage the soil structure going over it. And it probably depends a little bit on how the soil amelioration happens afterwards and rotation wise. So what you put in afterwards, it sort of plays a big part in it as well, yeah.
Is that something you discuss with clients when you're doing the designing process, what their rotation phase they're in? Yeah,
we certainly do. From one point from the stubble loads that we can handle, or what type of stubble. So if we've got pretty ordinary soil structure, things like canola just gets drowned.
I can imagine.
So you sort of better putting a cereal or something like that in there, and as well to build the organic matter back up in the soil.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it seems to be that to bind it back up and get it going. But once you've got one productive crop off it, like the first productive crop off it, then you're right to go, providing you haven't damaged the paddock too much in the growing season with the sprayer or spreader or whatever. Yeah.
How long does this drainage type last before you might have to redo it?
It'd depend on a fair few of those things. So soil type definitely. Soil type's always moving, of course. So you have your soils shrinking and swelling and that with going wet and dry. So that can make your holes go back to holes eventually. Things like beans, if you've had a particularly bad year like this last one for fungicides and things like that, when sprayers have been making a mess of things.
Oh yeah. Probably
the worst thing that we can say that farmers can do, they get worried about going through the drain and wrecking their drain that they've spent all this money on, and they turn before the drain and don't drive through the drain because they don't want to bog the drain, but they've created a lip beside the drain so the water doesn't get there. You're better off just going through the drain and just clean the drain out at the end of the year.
So you can do spot patches essentially if you're getting those issues like the drain getting clogged up. You don't need to redo the whole paddock.
We have for anything we've ever done, we've got the GPS file for everything, so we can just load that straight back up and jump in the floor of the drain and run the floor, and you generally get like 1 or 2 bucket loads out, and you can grade that off onto a headland or something like that where it's not so important to the side of a hill, and then you don't have to regrade the entire field. Yeah.
That's handy, knowing that you don't have to redo the whole paddock if some part falls apart sort of thing. Yeah. Do you have any recommendations on how often you should redoing it, or do you come out and assess or just see how it goes?
It's really just see how it goes because it's so variable, so it's generally just up to the farmer they'll have a look and they'll sort of know when the ruts in the drains are sort of getting a little bit big, or for just too rough on machinery, or the ruts are stopping the water flow too much and allowing it to come out onto the paddocks again.
Do you see the difference in the paddocks? Do farmers tell you how better they've performed or anything like that?
Yeah, quite often we get shown the yield data and things like programs like My John Deere and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The next year's design process, we're in the office with them, and it's generally the first thing that happens. They'll fire up their computer and show us what happened with the stuff that we did last year or the year before, and as it progressively sort of got better, the stuff that we did sort of 4 years ago sort of thing.
Do you usually see a benefit from putting this in rather than does it ever get worse, I suppose?
Yeah, generally not.
You'd hope not.
Probably the only time where it might is this risk of erosion. So yeah, if it's too steep, it'll erode, and then which the erosion, obviously, other than being erosion on the hole in your paddock and a scar or whatever, but down the bottom where that dirt gets deposited is generally on the flat areas that get really wet, so where they can't afford any form of elevation change. So that's where the real problem is, where the dirt gets deposited. Yeah.
After chatting with Andrew, I was keen to go and speak with local grower Ed Weatherly, who had been using Andrew's bucket on his own farm. G'day, Ed.
Good, how are you?
Not too bad, lovely to see you.
Of course.
Thanks for meeting me out here. So speaking to Andrew, he ran us through the whole process of how his business works and the laser levelling bucket. Can you tell me about your experience with it and why you chose to use it?
Yeah, we sort of went with the laser bucket after trying a few other different options, and we certainly do some different options as well. But the beauty of the laser bucket is they'll obviously dig the drain on grade, but they can actually use that dirt to lay out in the paddock and create fall or fill holes, whatever you choose to do with it really. You're making use of that product as opposed to just getting rid of it in the paddock. So that's been, we've had good experience with that.
What sort of waterlogging have you seen and what's your farm like to use it?
It varies a lot, so we've got quite significant contours on some of our country, and that's more about using a bucket to create contour drains to fall in. In other spots it's dead flat and we're just draining things out, so it minimises the amount of drains in paddocks, which they're not maintenance free, so the less you've got the better, I suppose.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How much of your farm has been done, and then what sort of benefits?
It's a really hard question to answer in terms of putting exact numbers on it. At a guess that we're probably 60 or 70% through a program that we'd like to see to sort of get our surface drainage perfect. Yeah, we're seeing results go from basically complete write-offs due to waterlogging to but turning it into high potential and high productivity country. I would estimate probably 20 to 30% of our country was severely affected by waterlogging maybe at the start of the program. The low-hanging fruit's definitely been done, and now we're sort of tending to finesse a little bit more. Yeah,
so you started with those paddocks that were pretty much what you called the write-offs and got them a bit more productive, and now you're moving towards the more marginal gains, I suppose?
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit was definitely there to be picked. We did sort of best return on investment, I suppose, for that stuff, and also we just weren't quite sure. We picked the easy projects that kind of were going to work. If there were more difficult projects, we kind of knew we probably needed to build our experience and techniques a bit more. So yeah.
Andrew talked about that he does the whole process from start to finish. We also talked about how sometimes he does just paddocks at a time or a whole farm at a time. Did you do one or the other?
We made a lot of mistakes, so I kind of would just get a yield map or an NBDI map and go, okay, we want to drain that section.
Yeah.
Not fully understanding that there was probably a whole catchment above it that was sort of impacting that. A lot of it comes down to what stubble's there.
Yeah.
So what stubbles are good to work with, and cash flow and plenty to do, put it that way.
I can imagine. I suppose with Andrew as well, is it nice having him that he is the one-stop shop, so to speak, that he's not like you've got different contractors on doing different tasks, that he can pretty much encapsulate everything? Yeah,
very much so. So, he wasn't the first person we used. Well, he wasn't in existence when we started.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed the process in that the design process and the fact that he can actually give us a pretty fixed amount of the amount of dirt moved, and through experience we know roughly the cost of a cubic metre of dirt to move, so it's actually quite accurate to budget for. There's obviously variables. Occasionally, very, very occasionally, we sort of hit a project where we go, well, that's actually not worth it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, like if we, winter time comes and the water's running the other way, we've got someone to go and
have a chat to.
Their ass, I suppose. Yeah, it's not. You don't sort of have two guys pointing the finger at each other. Yeah, so that's been good.
Have you had any results that didn't turn out how you expected? You said you've made a few mistakes, but have you ever gone, we really stuffed this one up, or has it just been learnings? Yeah,
learnings mainly. So I haven't permanently stuffed one.
Yeah.
Don't think. Yeah, maybe a couple of times with erosion, maybe. We're just not realising the intensity of the power of water when it sort of gets concentrated. It's not a one-year project. It sort of tends to be have to happen over a couple of years to get them really tickety-boo.
Yeah. Have you had to redo any of your paddocks with how soil moves and the water changes?
No, it is a bit of an ongoing process. So, for instance, on a really heavy clay, with not a lot of fall, we might have gone in and designed it at a couple of different levels. Some of what we initially did was to, try the lesser, knowing that if it didn't work, that we could up that amount of dirt later. So, and we have found in a few spots, you know, that it just wasn't enough, and that we've had to change. And I have not seen a project we've done that hasn't improved the productive capacity and the health of the country. No, it's been a game changer there.
What's your plan then going forward? Are you going to continue doing the laser lever bucking, or are you going to do some other sort of drainage formats?
We'll definitely continue with the buckets.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, you know, with rainfall intensities and things like that, that being able to manage surface water is critical, and I think buckets, for me, are a really effective way of doing that. We are getting more and more interested in subsurface drainage. Yeah, no, certainly continue with the buckets. Yeah, and it seems like every time you think you're kind of getting close to the finish of it, you find another
paddock to
red
do.
bit on the yield map. Yeah, yep. So
Never
yeah,
ending.
Never. Yeah.
The development of technology and its ability to be used in mapping and design works means growers can see more individualised and accurate outcomes. While waterlogging continues to be an ongoing issue, it's great to see how the combination of machinery and technology can be used to mitigate it.